I didn't think the door would lock. I remember the moment like it was a physical punch to my chest, the sound of the latch clicking into place. At first, I laughed nervously, brushing it off as part of the fun challenge she had dared me to do. "Just a minute," she had said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Come on, it'll be funny." And I had, with a mix of curiosity and bravado, stepped inside. But the laughter died in my throat when I tugged at the handle again. Nothing. Not even a tiny wiggle. The closet was narrow, way narrower than I remembered from casual glimpses when she left the door open. Coats hung on both sides, brushing against me when I moved. Dresses in all colors and textures, soft pastels, shimmering fabrics, delicate lace, swished against my skin. The air smelled faintly of perfume, mixed with fabric softener and the musty scent of boxes tucked in the corners. My heart raced, my pulse thundering in my ears. "Okay, don't panic," I whispered to myself, pressing my back against the wall. But the words felt hollow. My palms were sweaty against the smooth wood, my knees uncomfortably bent in the tight space. I could feel the fabric of the hanging coats against my arms, the soft textures brushing like they were alive, observing me. And then my phone buzzed. I grabbed it, fumbling with trembling hands. A message lit up the screen. 1 week. "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything," winking face. 1 week. 7 days. Locked inside this closet. Alone with her clothes, her things, her perfume, and me. The words swirled in my head like a storm, mixing disbelief, fear, and an almost forbidden curiosity. My throat tightened. 1 week? That was insane. I sank to the floor, knees pulled to my chest, and pressed my head against the soft fabric of a hanging sweater. The texture was comforting and foreign at the same time. My fingers brushed against the sleeve, tracing the smooth threads almost absent-mindedly. My mind was spinning. What am I doing here? Why did I agree to this? I noticed a small, narrow mirror tucked between boxes. I had never really paid attention to it, but now it caught my reflection. The person staring back at me was familiar, yet strange. Eyes wide, pupils dilated with fear, mouth slightly parted in disbelief. Hair sticking out in a messy tangle. A shiver ran down my spine, because even in my panic, a small part of me couldn't look away. I tilted my head, examining the reflection more closely. My jaw clenched as I realized that fear wasn't the only thing stirring. Beneath it, curiosity. A tiny spark of intrigue. Part of me wanted to see, to explore, to touch, to experiment. I tried to push it away. This is just a joke. Just a stupid bet. Nothing else. My own voice sounded foreign, echoing slightly in the narrow space. But the reflection didn't seem to agree. The eyes staring back at me were wide and alert, almost daring me to do the impossible, to embrace the unknown, to lean into discomfort. I shivered, the cool air brushing my exposed arms. The closet felt alive, watching me. Every piece of fabric, every shoe tucked below the racks, every scarf that smelled faintly of her perfume seemed to whisper, "Try me, see what you're capable of." I wrapped my arms around my knees, trembling slightly, and tried to focus on breathing. In, out, in, out. But each breath seemed louder than the last, more pronounced. The heartbeat in my chest was pounding like a drum, relentless. My hands kept brushing the coats, unable to stop themselves, curious about the softness, the textures, the faint scent clinging to them. A thought hit me, this isn't just about a bet anymore. The closet wasn't merely a confined space, it was a stage. A test. A challenge that would push me to my limits. And even though I hated myself for thinking it, a part of me felt excited. Dangerous. Alive. I leaned against the wall, staring at the mirror, pulse racing, mind spinning. The door didn't move. I was trapped. Alone. Afraid. And yet, strangely, I was beginning to wonder who I could be if I stayed. For the first time, I realized that this week in the closet might not just change how I spent my time. It might change me. The first day trapped in her closet stretched endlessly, like time itself had been warped. I tried pacing, but the space was impossibly narrow. Every step meant brushing against dresses, jackets, coats. Their textures, silk, wool, lace, felt strange against my skin, soft and foreign. My hands kept brushing over the fabrics, almost instinctively, as if they were speaking to me, saying, "You belong here. Or maybe you just want to belong." Hunger gnawed at me by mid-morning. She had thoughtfully slid a small meal under the door, a sandwich and a bottle of water, but I barely touched it. My stomach churned, not from hunger, but from anxiety. My mind spun, imagining the world outside. People walking, laughing, living normal lives, while I was here, trapped, cocooned in fabrics that weren't mine, in a space that was simultaneously comforting and terrifying. "Are you okay in there?" she called softly through the door. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice cracking. The sound startled me. Even my own words felt strange, softer than usual, echoing in the small space. I collapsed against the wall and let my legs curl beneath me. My reflection in the narrow mirror caught my eye. Someone haggard, anxious, but wide-eyed. Someone forced to confront feelings that had been hidden beneath layers of habit and comfort. Fear, humiliation, and curiosity mingled in a swirl I didn't know how to name. Hours passed. I tried occupying myself, straightening hangers, stacking shoes, but even these small tasks couldn't quiet my mind. Every rustle of fabric sounded exaggerated. Every shadow seemed to move, alive, judging me. I could feel myself trembling, but it wasn't just fear, it was something else. A tension deep in my chest that made my heartbeat feel too loud, too exposed. At one point, I found myself touching a soft blouse, lingering just long enough to feel its warmth, its smooth texture. I recoiled immediately, ashamed, whispering to the empty space, "Stop it. This isn't you. This is ridiculous." But the temptation returned over and over. Fingers brushing a scarf. Hands hovering over a shoe. Each touch sent a shiver down my spine, a mixture of guilt and inexplicable thrill. By evening, I had begun noticing small details I'd never cared about before. The faint scent of her perfume on a coat, the way a dress fell against a hanger, the tiny imperfections in a scarf stitching. My reflection in the mirror changed each time I glanced at it. I started to see potential. Possibility. Something unspoken stirring inside me, a quiet curiosity I couldn't suppress. I sank against the back wall, eyes closed, letting the coats brush against my skin. My heartbeat slowly settled into a rhythm. Even in the panic, even in the confinement, I felt the first flicker of something dangerous and exhilarating, a part of me wondering what it would be like to try, just a little, to explore this unknown, this strange new feeling creeping beneath my fear. I whispered to myself, barely audible, maybe this isn't just a bet. Maybe this could be something else. By the third day, the closet had stopped feeling like a trap. The panic and terror of the first hours had faded into something quieter, more manageable. I still had moments of fear, every creak of the apartment above made me jump. But now, curiosity began to weave its way into the anxiety. The clothes surrounding me weren't just obstacles anymore, they were invitations. I reached for a soft pastel blouse, hesitating as my fingers grazed the fabric. It was smooth, lighter than I expected, almost teasing me with its delicate texture. My heartbeat accelerated as I pulled it over my shoulders. It slid over my arms, hugging parts of my chest and waist differently than any shirt I owned. My reflection in the narrow mirror caught me off guard. The person staring back seemed different. Softer, uncertain, yet strangely alive. I traced my fingers along the seam, fascinated by the sensation, feeling the brush of fabric against my skin like a whisper. A thrill ran down my spine. I whispered to myself, "This is just fabric. That's it." But even as I said it, my body betrayed me. The blouse fit in a way that didn't feel wrong. It felt natural, like it was meant to be there. Next, I discovered a small box hidden in the corner, labeled "for fun." Inside were scarves, tights, and a few subtle makeup items, a lipstick, a small palette of eyeshadow, a compact. My hands trembled as I opened it, afraid and excited at the same time. Could I? Should I? The thought alone sent shivers across my skin. I began slowly, experimenting with a touch of lip gloss. My reflection caught the light differently now. The color was soft but noticeable. My lips, my expression, my eyes, they all looked new, delicate, yet familiar. I leaned closer, tracing my own features with a growing fascination. My hands shook, not with fear, but with anticipation. I tried posture next. Standing straighter, letting my shoulders relax, shifting my weight to one hip. I practiced tilting my head slightly, testing the curves of my body in the reflection. Each movement felt strange at first, but then, natural. Fluid. I whispered sentences to myself, testing my voice, soft and melodic, listening to its own unfamiliar cadence. Hours passed without me noticing. The closet, once a prison, became a private theater where I could experiment with identity, with appearance, with movement, with voice. I laughed softly at myself when I messed up, lipstick smudged, scarf twisted, posture awkward. The mirror reflected progress, clumsy, yet undeniably transformative. By evening, surrounded by clothes, scarves, and the faint scent of perfume lingering in the air, I sank to the floor. Breathing deeply, I realized something startling. I wasn't just passing time anymore. I wasn't just playing a bet. I was discovering something, curious, hidden, intimate, that had been lying dormant inside me all along. The fear was still there, yes, but it had shifted. Now it mingled with excitement, with anticipation, with a strange, thrilling possibility. I whispered, almost reverently, maybe, this is who I could be. And for the first time, I didn't flinch at the thought. By the 5th day, the closet no longer felt like a prison, it felt like a workshop. A studio. A private world where I could stretch, explore, and experiment without fear of judgment. That morning, she slid a small bag through the door. I hesitated before opening it, my fingers trembling. Inside were carefully selected outfits, skirts, soft tops, tights, and a tiny, neat makeup kit. A note accompanied it. Only if you want to winking face. I stared at it for a long moment, debating whether I was ready. But the curiosity that had been growing inside me over the past days finally won. Slowly, deliberately, I opened the bag, letting my hands linger over the fabrics. The skirts were soft, almost silky. The tops were gentle against my fingertips, textured, alive. My pulse quickened as I held each piece up, imagining how it might feel against my skin. I changed carefully, cautiously, moving in the cramped space with exaggerated slowness. First the tights, then a soft skirt, finally a fitted top. The sensation was intoxicating, the smooth fabric against my skin, the subtle stretch as I moved, the way the colors reflected the dim light of the closet. I looked in the mirror. The reflection was different, yes, but undeniably me. A version of me I hadn't met before. I began to experiment with movement, shifting my weight from one leg to the other, adjusting my posture. My reflection showed subtle changes. Shoulders relaxed, chin slightly lifted, hands brushing the fabric absent-mindedly. I whispered sentences softly, testing the tone of my voice, hearing how it blended with this new image. Each trial was both thrilling and terrifying. Later, I found a scarf and draped it around my neck, experimenting with how it changed my appearance. I touched my hair, brushing it differently, tucking strands behind my ears. A touch of lip gloss, a subtle sweep of eyeshadow, tiny details, but enough to make me pause and study the reflection in awe. I was learning to see myself, not as a curiosity, not as a bet, but as someone with presence, with identity. As the day stretched on, I practiced sitting, standing, walking, even pacing like I might in a room outside. Each motion felt unfamiliar but natural. I imagined passing a stranger in a hallway, holding a cup of coffee in one hand, scarf draped loosely, posture relaxed. I smiled softly, realizing how much confidence had grown in me already, though I had no one to witness it. By the evening, I could stand in front of the mirror for hours, adjusting outfits, brushing hair, experimenting with voice and posture. I whispered to myself, curiosity and excitement mingling with a hint of fear. Who am I really? The closet, once claustrophobic and oppressive, had transformed into a sanctuary. A space where fear became curiosity, hesitation became experimentation, and self-discovery began to take root. For the first time, I felt like I was not just surviving a bet, I was thriving inside it. And as I touched the soft fabric against my skin, glanced at my reflection, and adjusted a stray strand of hair, I realized something profound. I was becoming someone I had been too afraid to meet before. The 7th day arrived faster than I had imagined, and with it came the weight of the moment I had been both dreading and secretly anticipating. That morning, a folded note slid under the closet door, crisp and deliberate. My hands shook as I picked it up. The words were simple, but they carried the gravity of every choice I had made over the past week. Time to come out. Are you ready? I froze. The closet, once a sanctuary, now felt like the threshold of something much bigger. My pulse raced. My chest tightened. The walls that had cradled me, that had given me permission to explore and discover, now seemed impossibly close, pressing in, reminding me that stepping out would be stepping into judgment, into the unknown. I stared at my reflection in the narrow mirror, taking in the changes, not just the soft clothing, the subtle makeup, or the scarf draped casually, but the person staring back. Someone calmer. Someone bolder. Someone I recognized yet had never met before. My hands brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, fingers lingering on the curve of my neck. The mirror reflected uncertainty and possibility. I thought of the world outside, the hallways, the apartment, the neighbors, strangers, the casual glances, the whispered judgments I imagined. My heart thudded in my ears. Could I handle being seen like this? Could I carry this new identity into a world that had only known the old me? My breathing deepened. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to hide, to return to the safety of the closet. But another, quieter voice inside me whispered, "You've learned too much. You've changed. You can't go back now, not fully." I lifted my chin. Slowly, deliberately, I opened the closet door. Light spilled in, warm and blinding, and I blinked several times, adjusting. She stood there, waiting, calm, supportive. Her eyes were soft but piercing, filled with curiosity, pride, and something I couldn't quite name. "You've done it," she said quietly. "1 week. The challenge is complete." I swallowed hard, voice trembling but steadying. I don't know if I can go back," I admitted. "It feels, right now. This version of me, it feels real." She stepped closer, gentle and patient. "Then don't. You don't have to. Whatever you choose, it's okay." The hallway suddenly felt enormous. Every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, distant traffic, her soft breathing, seemed amplified. I took a tentative step forward, then another. My body moved differently now, lighter, more aware, more deliberate. I adjusted the scarf around my neck, brushed a strand of hair behind my shoulder, and breathed deeply. Every step was a decision. Every heartbeat, a declaration. I wasn't just stepping out of the closet, I was stepping into myself. Into a self I had been too afraid to embrace. As I fully emerged into the apartment, into the light, into her gaze, a strange calm washed over me. The fear hadn't disappeared, it lingered at the edges, but it was no longer controlling me. Confidence had replaced hesitation. Curiosity had replaced shame. The bet was over. The challenge was complete. But the transformation? That was only just beginning. The world outside the closet felt impossibly large, yet for the first time, I didn't feel lost in it. Each step I took across the apartment was deliberate. The soft swish of the skirt against my legs, the gentle brush of hair against my cheeks, the subtle warmth of the scarf draped around my shoulders, it all felt intimate, like I was finally inhabiting a space that was truly mine. I caught a glimpse of myself in a mirror near the door. My reflection no longer looked startled or fearful, it looked steady, curious, alive. She watched me, standing quietly in the background, smiling softly. There was no teasing, no smirk, no amusement, just a warmth that made me realize she was proud, supportive, and present. "You're amazing," she said, almost like a whisper. I laughed softly, nervously, my voice a mix of disbelief and exhilaration. The sound felt right. Real. Honest. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, I didn't feel like I was pretending. I was present, confident, and wholly myself. Even the simplest things felt transformative. Holding a cup of coffee, walking across the living room, adjusting my scarf in the reflection of the window, each action carried a subtle, yet profound empowerment. I realized that the confidence I had been cultivating inside the closet wasn't bound to that space. It had traveled with me. Every movement, every glance, every small gesture now felt intentional, almost like a quiet declaration: I am here. I exist. I am me. That evening, I sat on the edge of the sofa, surrounded by soft fabrics and scarves I had grown familiar with. I didn't rush to change back into my old clothes. I wanted to savor the sensation of inhabiting this self I had discovered. I traced a finger along the hem of my skirt, smiled at my reflection in the window, and breathed deeply. The closet hadn't trapped me. It had given me freedom. A week of confinement had become a week of revelation, courage, and experimentation. I had faced my fear, embraced curiosity, and found a version of myself that I had never dared to meet before. By the time night settled in, I felt steady, strong, and undeniably empowered. I wasn't just surviving the challenge, I was thriving because of it. The bet had ended. The week was over. And in the quiet glow of the evening, I smiled, fully aware that this was just the beginning. I had met her, the person I had been afraid to meet, waiting patiently inside me, and I wasn't letting her go. Late at night, the apartment quiet except for the distant hum of the city, I sit by the window and reflect on the week that changed me. At first, being trapped in that closet felt like a nightmare. Narrow walls, the scent of fabrics, the impossibly small space, it was suffocating. Every moment was a mix of fear, panic, and humiliation. I had been forced to confront feelings I didn't understand, desires I hadn't allowed myself to acknowledge. Each passing hour had stretched endlessly, filled with uncertainty and the relentless question, who am I? But slowly, the fear began to shift. The closet became more than a confined space, it became a mirror, a stage, a sanctuary. I discovered textures, colors, and movements I had never allowed myself to explore. I whispered to myself, I experimented with my voice, my posture, my expression. I tried on makeup, draped scarves, practiced walking and sitting differently. At first clumsy, awkward, and hesitant, each act became a small victory. Each glance in the mirror became a quiet affirmation, you can do this. You can exist. You can be yourself. I realized then that transformation isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes, it's quiet. Subtle. It arrives in whispers, in a brush of fabric, a tilt of the head, the first confident flick of lip gloss, the moment you finally meet your own gaze without flinching. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's a heartbeat, steadying itself after days of panic, saying, this is you. And it's enough. The week had been a bet, a challenge, and a test. But it became more than that. It became permission, to explore, to question, to accept, to embrace. I had stepped into a world that was mine alone, discovered a self I had been too afraid to meet, and emerged not just unscathed, but empowered. If you're watching this, unsure, curious, afraid, know that change doesn't erase who you are. It introduces you to yourself, sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully, but always honestly. And the freedom, the joy, the authenticity that comes from meeting that self for the first time, it's worth every tremble, every heartbeat, every quiet, shivering whisper in the dark. I smile softly, looking at the reflection in the window. The city outside stretches endlessly, full of possibilities. And I know now that being trapped wasn't punishment, it was an invitation. An invitation to finally be me. And that is freedom.